Close your eyes and let us travel back in time, about 50,000 years ago, into a cold, rocky cave on a freezing Pleistocene night where the fear of ferocious beasts lingers in the air. A fire burns in the center of the cave, and your entire tribe, children, elders, hunters, is asleep around it with absolutely no privacy, no bedroom, no doors to lock, and no comfortable mattresses, just dry grass and animal skins. In the midst of this raw, uncomfortable, and wild backdrop, two early humans draw close to each other, their bodies carrying the scent of sweat, dirt, and smoke. The romance of the modern world, complete with candles, perfumes, or soft music, simply does not exist here, leaving only pure, raw biology. But a profound question arises here that will shake the very wires of your mind. In that primitive darkness, in the corner of that cave, were they merely performing a mechanical process just to produce children? Were they doing everything that today's society considers a taboo or dirty? Could it be that our understanding of ancient humans is completely flawed? When we think of early humans, we often assume they were just primitive animals and that their sexual encounters were boring, 30-second chores whose sole purpose was to propel the species forward, strictly engaging in what we call normal vaginal sex. However, on paper, human sexuality is one of the most bizarre phenomena in the entire universe. We are among the very few creatures on Earth that mate while looking into each other's eyes. Female ovulation is completely hidden, meaning the male has no idea when the female might conceive. And most importantly, we engage in this act year-round, in any season, not just for reproduction, but purely for pleasure. So did humans living thousands of years ago engage in practices like oral sex, anal sex, and manual stimulation? The answer is so astonishing that it completely uproots modern society's notions of purity. The answer is a resounding yes, and on a scale that you cannot even begin to imagine. The very acts that you might think are inventions of modern bedrooms or hidden corners of the internet are actually woven deeply into our DNA over millions of years. How can we prove this ancient truth through evolutionary biology? To understand this, we must turn not just to history, but to the pages of biology and evolution, going back more than 100,000 years to look at our closest biological relatives, the chimpanzees and bonobos. We share almost 99% of our DNA with them, and if you ever study the society of bonobo monkeys, your mind will be absolutely blown. In bonobo society, physical intimacy is used to relieve tension, stop fights, or even simply say hello to one another. They engage in oral stimulation, manually stimulate each other's genitals, and even engage in same-sex behaviors because nature taught them that sexual pleasure is the social glue that keeps a community together. When early humans were evolving on this very same evolutionary branch, survival was incredibly difficult, fraught with a lack of prey, the fear of disease, and internal tribal tensions that could drive them mad. In response, the brain developed a complex system of hormones like oxytocin and dopamine, making intimacy not just a baby-making machine, but a crucial survival tool needed to bond the tribe, resolve conflicts, and make them feel safe during terrifying nights. Nature did not give us thousands of nerve endings in our lips, fingers, and anal regions for no reason. If evolution only wanted basic procreation, human anatomy would have been designed completely differently. What exactly were these ancient people doing on the cave floor when we break down the 4 types of intimacy? Let us dive into the ancient reality, starting with normal vaginal sex, which was indeed the basic requirement for the survival of the species, but it was never limited to just a single missionary position. By observing animals and understanding their own physical anatomy, early humans utilized every possible angle and position to their advantage. But did they also know about foreplay and manual stimulation? You only need to look at the pottery of the ancient Mochi civilization of Peru, dating back to 100 to 800 AD, which intricately displays men and women stimulating each other with their hands. Even thousands of years before that specific civilization, hands were naturally used not just for pleasure, but to awaken and arouse a partner, serving as the most instinctual and primary form of foreplay known to mankind. Is it possible that oral and anal practices are just modern inventions? Absolutely not, as there is massive historical evidence in ancient Roman and Greek civilizations, and even in India's ancient Khajuraho temples and the Kama Sutra, which is a compilation of knowledge thousands of years old where oral sex sex is explicitly documented as alparishtaka. Going back 50,000 years, using the lips and tongue to satisfy a partner was a completely natural and instinctual method, especially when a woman was pregnant or menstruating, and normal intercourse was neither possible nor safe. Furthermore, while anal sex is perhaps considered the biggest taboo today, history tells a completely different story. In the ancient civilizations of China, Egypt, Greece, and South America, it was used not only for extreme pleasure, but as a highly effective natural method of birth control. When food was scarce and a tribe simply could not bear the burden of feeding another child, alternative forms of intimacy were the absolute safest ways to achieve sexual satisfaction without the dangerous risk of an unwanted pregnancy. How many rounds did they actually last in a single night? This question stems from today's society, which has been severely misled by exaggerated videos on the internet, but the biological truth is vastly different and highly fascinating. Men in ancient times possessed significantly higher testosterone levels than modern men because their diet was incredibly pure, consisting of unprocessed meats, roots, and berries, and they engaged in heavy physical labor all day, resulting in exceptional blood circulation. However, nature has a strict physiological rule known as the refractory period, which is the biological time required to become aroused again after climaxing. Early humans in caves did not aim for 5 or 10 rounds because their encounters were often fast, aggressive, and quick due to the constant threat of predators lurking outside. You simply cannot leisurely spend 3 hours making love when a saber-toothed tiger is prowling near your cave entrance. Yet, when they were completely safe and secure, their encounters could last incredibly long, heavily utilizing manual and oral foreplay for hours to maximize pleasure without physical exhaustion, meaning it was never a superficial game of counting rounds, but rather a profound game of survival and supreme quality. Did ancient people use condoms or any form of protection? It is a mind-blowing fact that while the modern latex condom is a 20th century invention, the history of the condom itself stretches back thousands of years. Historians reveal that around 1350 BC, ancient Egyptians used covers made of linen cloth to protect against insects and dangerous infections. And Greek mythology records that King Minos of Crete used a goat bladder to protect his wife from a curse of serpents and scorpions in his semen, which was likely a metaphor for a severe sexually transmitted disease. Later, ancient Romans and medieval people would carefully wash the intestines of sheep and pigs, soak them in oil, and use them as highly effective condoms. While early cavemen did not have access to these specific crafted items, protection for them meant relying on alternative practices like the pull-out method or non-reproductive intimacy to avoid unwanted pregnancies. Back then, intimacy was a communal activity free of guilt, viewed as natural as eating food or drinking water. Unlike today's era, where it has been strictly confined to closed doors, legal contracts, and deep psychological complexities. Why is it that something so natural in ancient times is considered so dirty or strange today? The modern twist lies in the rise of civilization, agriculture, and organized religion. When humans began farming around 10,000 years ago, they claimed ownership of land, and with land came the rigid concept of property and inheritance. Men needed to ensure that their property would go only to their own bloodline, which sparked the strict control over female sexuality, suddenly reducing intimacy solely to a mechanical tool for reproduction. Anything that could not produce a child was forcefully declared unnatural or sinful, turning our body's most natural biological functions into a dirty secret and censoring the very thing that kept us together as a species for millions of years. Everything you are today, every part of your skin that reacts to touch, is a living masterpiece of 300,000 years of evolution. So asking if ancient people engaged in these acts is exactly like asking if they breathed. Sexuality is not a modern invention downloaded with smartphones. It is the oldest language of our species, used by our ancestors to comfort scared companions in the dark and steal moments of joy amidst a brutal existence. So forget the heavy guilt imposed by modern society and remember that you are a magnificent creature of a universe whose DNA has encoded the art of giving and receiving pleasure for millions of years, because nature did not design us merely to survive, but to truly and deeply feel.